Hey everyone, ED's20, and welcome back to Reading Reviews. We got a lot of reviews to read. Not really. So, obviously the title is for Xenoblade Chronicles Mira, but I do have a few other stories. I got some reviews. Unfortunately, the reviews aren't interesting, so I thought I would just hammer them out here quickly. So I wrote a fic called, gosh, these reviews are barely worth anything, but I wrote a fic called I Want to Talk to You, which takes place after the true ending of Code Vein, and it features some sad Revenant Janix. And the only review I got on it was from someone, it was an anonymous, it just says, hey, isn't this from AO3? Nice, by the way. And I'm like, yeah, it is from AO3. I'm the same author, I post on both sites. Like, what kind of question is that? I thought that was, I mean, I'm glad he said nice, by the way. I would have hoped for a little bit more, but I guess, you know, that's as much as you can expect. It's not like there's a lot of Code Vein fanfics on fanfiction. There aren't. There's plenty more on Archive, not on fanfiction. Like, seriously, I was amazed at how little they had. I also wrote Bloodlust, which is a multi-chapter fic going through the events of Code Vein, focused on Revenant Janix, who, if you read Xenoblade Chronicles X, you know Janix. This version of her is a little different. She does still have a lot of issues with her past, but she doesn't remember, because that's the thing about Code Vein, that your character doesn't have any memories. So my story is about her regaining her memories and learning a bunch of crazy things about herself. Okay, so bear with me as I read this review. I didn't like the review, but I'm gonna read it because I read reviews. So the Bloodlust review is left by I don't even know if that's the name. It's IHVEVUHEIGV. Aihuvev. I don't know. And here she said, I was hoping for there to be some male and Io fics, because the story is the pairing is Janix and Io, who is your attendant. She's your buddy, the first person you meet in Code Vein. But not a single one exists that has a planned story to go along with it. Think you could make the protagonist ambiguous here for my heterosexual self? Sorry if it's too much to ask for. Would love to make my own, but never have the time, I guess, writing. I ain't against lesbian couples, but would be nice to see some freeform with protag's gender. So I guess the first answer is no. I'm not going to make Janix's gender ambiguous, which admittedly the story kind of started out like that because Janix didn't talk a lot. Your character never talks in Code Vein, so she's very unapproachable at the beginning of the story, and there's a lot of times where I realized, wow, she hasn't said anything. And I guess that kind of gives you the impression that, is she a girl? And I'm like, yes, she is. There's no joke about it. There's no maybe, if so. But I fell in love with Io. I love Io. And because I played as Janix, I saw Io's interactions with Janix. They'd be the same with any character, no matter what they look like, if it's a man or a woman. But, you know, I mean, I think it's funny that for as much as Janix is a bisexual character, I've never written a story with her hooking up with a man. So I think that's funny. The closest I got was in Scales in Love. She brings up that she had a boyfriend way back in the academy days before she met Lila, I think. And that's it. When I used to RP, before everybody who I RP'd with stabbed me in the back at the same time, and then got mad at me for getting mad at them, I did RP like a scenario with another guy, a friend of mine at the time, that involved Janix being with a male character. But that was about it. I've never actually written any more of her with a male character. So suffice it to say, I'm not going to change it. That's how it's going to be. So, and then the most annoying thing, I wrote a fic for the 2-year anniversary of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was Rex, Pyra, and Mithra on a hilltop, not unlike the one that Rex and Pyra meet at the start of Xenoblade 2. And it has them just kind of talking and just being friendly and happy with each other about New Elysium. And it's been 2 years, they're all living in peace. And the chapters, the fucking reviews that I got, bring up nothing. The first review by Ultimate CCC says someone's missing. And the second review by Guest said, what happened to Nia and Tora? because Nia, Tora, Poppy, and Dromark are not name dropped in the fic. And honestly, I get that it's like a 2-year anniversary fic, but the idea of having the characters decide, oh, by the way, what's Nia up to? Oh, she's up to this. What's Tora up to? Oh, he's up to this. I don't like it. It doesn't feel natural to just have them all catch up like that. The fic mentions Zeke and Morag specifically only, and that's because Zeke and Morag are important. Zeke is Prince of Tantal, and Morag is the Special Inquisitor of Morardain. They're important people. They travel the world. They're managing new political ties between new countries formed by the peoples of the Titans who are now living on New Elysium. And so because of that, it makes sense that they would reach out to Rex, Pyra, and Mithra and keep up with them via letters. So they send them letters, and that's what I think Mithra brings up, that they got letters from them. It's like, oh, cool, we'll read those later. But not Nia, Tora, Dromark, or Poppy, because the way I imagine it is that they wouldn't move so far away that they wouldn't just be able to come visit, you know? So I just left them out. I didn't think it'd be such an issue, but apparently the only thing people want to talk about in reviews for the story is the fact that Nia and Dromark are missing. And I'm just like I love them. I love the whole cast, but I don't need them all for such a small little thing that I wrote for Xenoblade 2. I mean, geez, it's a little absurd. I shouldn't be so annoyed, but I am. Alright, all those reviews out of the way for those stories. We're going to move on to the main event, Xenoblade Chronicles X fanfic Xenoblade Chronicles Mira. Which I hate that I call it that because like, I love it. The title is perfect, but now fanfiction has it at the bottom of my fic list. So I got to scroll down every time I want to mess with it. I'm not updated. By comparison, Bloodlust is at the very top because it starts with a B. Anyway, so here we go. So first, the review on Chapter 1, 2050, left by Rexar888, who came back surprisingly. Like I thought you'd given up, because I made that whole video talking about not wanting to write Xenoblade X fics like a year ago, if not more. How long has it been? But I don't know. I didn't think you were still around reading Xenoblade Chronicles X fics 4 years later. Like, are there still people updating? Because on Archive of Our Own, Xenoblade Chronicles Mira had 0 views, 0 hits for like a week after I submitted it. No one was reading it. And I went back and I browsed the other stories in Archive, and a lot of them have like a dozen hits at most. It's like nobody's reading X fics, which is like, wow, then why am I writing one? But that's fine. I just think I'm just surprised by it. I haven't read an X fic since I stopped. You know, not interested. But some people are still submitting, which is quite fascinating. I guess I shouldn't be so surprised. That's all that fans do. They love to create stuff. Anyway, here we go. Rexar fic on Chapter 1. Review on Chapter 1. Good to see you back at it, and just in time for Xenoblade Chronicles X's 4th anniversary. Was not expecting a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 reference, if intended, but I'll be looking forward to seeing more of Ion for however long he's around. Rather refreshing reading your fight sequences again. As for the story itself, seems to jive with what I remembered of Jay's story and past from previous tales, though I'd have to reread those to see how cohesive the continuity actually is. Till then, though, glad you're back. Glad I'm back too. I like writing, and that's the main thing. So, man, I wish Aeon was a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 reference. I feel mad about missing that. Because he's not written the same way. He has an E instead of an I. But if you want to pretend that he is, I'm going to pretend that he is. That his name is a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 reference. I was this close to going into the story and changing his name to exactly be Ion. I was so close, but I decided not to. Actually, how I came up with Aeon's name was I thought about Elma. So I needed another one of her species to be with her. And I wanted it to be her brother. And I thought, well, what about Elma's name can I use to create someone else who sounds like they would fit with her? And I'm like, well, Elma's name is 4 letters long and starts with a vowel. Okay, so let's try starting with an A. Okay, Aeon. Done. That's literally how I came up with his name. I was gonna go A-E-I-O-U. No, A-I-O-U. I didn't want him to start with an E. But I got it with A, so I was like, there, got it. 4 letters, starts with a vowel. Sounds that's perfect. Matches with Elma. That's how I did it. Also, he has an N, whereas Elma has an M, so that works too. What's funny is that you say that, from what you remember, it jives with Janix's original tale, but Chapter 2050 actually introduces the first big difference between Mira and My Other X-Fix. In My Other X-Fix, Janix never met Elma until Elma woke her up in Noctilum from her life pod, and then she saw her for the first time. That was the first time she actually met, spoke, and interacted with Elma. She knew of her back on Earth, but they never actually crossed paths. So the story already has a big change by having Janix and Elma establish their friendship as starting in 2050, as opposed to in 2056 at the end of the, or 2057 at the end of the events of Xenoblade Chronicles X. So, yeah. Once again, I just can't. I've gotten so many compliments over my fight scenes, and I refuse to go around and present myself as, oh, I write amazing fight scenes, because I don't know if I actually do. People tell me that I do, so because they tell me that I do, I'm like, I guess I do. But I'm not gonna say that I do, because it sounds way too self-congratulatory. But I'm glad that you like them. So actually, here's another thing. 2050 also existed because back in chapter, I think it was in Reapers, there was actually a scene where Elma and Janix were walking through the White Whale, and Elma just, in a fit of nostalgia, decided to recall how they first met, and Janix and Elma basically talked through their original fight. And I'm like, well, that works, I guess. But once again, once I realized that I needed 2050 for way more reasons than, like, that if I had written the story without the year flashbacks, it would not be good. I needed 2050. And so when I did that and I put Elma and Janix meeting, I just took their conversation, actually turned it into a fight, and then put it at the beginning instead. Which, by the way, I can't get it. I use this way too much. I don't know if I use this a lot in this fic, but in a lot of stuff that I'm writing, I love using this move now, which is what Elma uses to defeat Janix. And it's this thing where someone strikes someone else in their chest, like they slam them, and then they put all their force into lifting them off the ground, and then they slam them into the earth. I think the closest thing I can describe that to is, if you've seen the Rise of Skywalker teasers, it's what Kylo Ren does to the person he's fighting when he jams his lightsaber in them, and he lifts them and slams them down. That's exactly it. I just loved using that move for some reason. And so I just love the idea of just the force and then just slamming them on the ground. Just, oof! Like that impact, I like it. And then of course Elma then pins Janix down and wins. Because of course, like, I mean, I guess people can see it as, oh, you don't want Janix to come off as like a Mary Sue, so you have to have Elma beat her. And I'm like, well, I mean, I think Elma would be better. Just because Elma's been alive longer, she's done a lot more things. I just think she'd outclass her. And also, Janix did just finish sparring with the Blood Brothers, so... And Ty, I think, too. I think it's 1-on-3. So, yeah. I mean, that's something that I do in Bloodlust also. For all the encounters, I always have the characters getting hit or knocked around at least once or twice. Because if they just flawless every encounter, then where's the fun in that? You know? And I'm more willing to have Janix get more hurt than everyone else, because that's how her character has always been. She gets so in your face in fights that of course she's going to walk away with the most damage compared to the rest of her team, except maybe Yakumo. But anyway, okay, so that's the first chapter. I don't think there's much else I could talk about for it. It was a really brief one. It covered exactly what it needed to cover for the start of the story. Just scrolling through it now. Yeah, I like that ending line though. Without the three headed for the tent, as they walked, Janix and Elma exchanged a look, noting something small about being in each other's presence. It wasn't significant, yet at the same time, maybe it was. Oh yeah, of course. Like, oh, so proud of myself for foreshadowing the entire fic that's about to happen. All right, here's Rexstar 888's review on Chapter 2. I have a feeling I know where you're going with this being not so much an XCX fanfic, especially with that XCM name drop. But I'll hold off on saying what until it's been confirmed. I'm interested in what you think, so we'll see. And already we're possibly seeing one key difference between this and Xeus canon. And that's the impression that Elma was the only pilot of that Ares model scale, when in canon the first Ares was a tandem scale. This is true. But you'll see. Obviously, it could be piloted by one, as much as done in canon, of course. But the fact that the unnamed hero, Elma's boyfriend, can't change my mind, thanks Zeke, has not been mentioned, leads me to believe that so far he's not going to be in this version of the XCX story, perhaps dropped in favor of Aeon. He was. Or at least the unnamed hero. I have named him, given him a personality, and he's Ion. But what I always thought about weird, and I don't understand why Xenoblade Chronicles X portrayed it this way, is that when they talk about Elma, like, she was there at the forefront of the attack. She defended us. She was the original hero. And people are like, oh my gosh. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, actually, there was a different person too, right? Like the unknown hero Doug mentions or something like that. And then Elma gives him a look. And he's like, all right, well, who needs lore and world building? I'll just shut up and we'll never get back to that plot point. I'm still bitter. I apologize. But it's ridiculous that they call Elma the hero. And then they're like, oh, but there's an unknown hero. But they make it sound like there was one hero, but there was two of them. Is it because there was one Skell? Just like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. I don't get why they chose to present it that way. It's confusing. It's like they're trying to create two different plot threads with it. I never liked it. Regardless, so the unknown hero does exist technically, in that the unknown hero is Elma and Ion. And there was a lot of reasons. I don't know if they ever specified if the unknown hero was a human or an alien. I think he was a human, but I wanted him to be someone that would help Elma and understand her point of view, so she wasn't completely on her own. And also Elma having a sibling would really help develop her relationship with Janix, who also has a sibling. In fact, they're both the older sisters to Janix's younger sister and Elma's younger brother. So I think that'll really help with their characterization and their bond as the story moves forward. I'm trying not to complain about Xenoblade Chronicles X too much. I'm sorry. That comes out. I can avoid it, but you get what I mean, right? So I did drop the unknown hero for Ion. I have him filling in that role. Did they ever specify that it was a romantic connection? Because once again, I don't know. I mean, obviously she seems really sad about or really bothered by the loss of the guy. But I don't think they ever specified it. I remember that did annoy me in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 when you get Elma and Zeke makes the joke and she's like, I'll leave it to your imagination. And I'm like, or you could just answer the question. You know, give us some clearance on some of the tons of things left in the fog in Xenoblade Chronicles X, which they did not do. I like the intention of not knowing what Ion's fate is. I don't think it's talked about much at all in-game, but outside of not knowing if any of the other arcs made it, we don't know if any of the arcs had family members of the White Whale passengers and crew. And knowing the nature of Elma in regards to the life hole, we know that, provided this detail's kept, Ion can't just be restored from the White Whale's life hold. Then of course there's likely the design limitation that these communicators don't work over such long ranges and were likely only good between arcs within Earth's orbit and maybe a bit beyond it. So that just adds more mystery to whether the arc Ion was on survived or not. I'm sure the damage casualty reports are going to be fun time for the White Whale crew and their individual morales. They will not be. To answer your question, Ion's not on an arc ship. He isn't. He's gone. At the start of the story, this is what I was talking about earlier. 2050 is the last time that Ion's been on Earth. Since then, Elma has no idea where he is. He specifically told her he was going to return to their home planet to try one more time to convince their people to help. And Elma's like, that's not going to do anything. He's like, yeah, but we have to try, because that's what their whole thing is built off of. That's what Elma pitched to him when they first left to come to Earth. So from 2050 to 2054, he's just been missing. He should have gone there and been back already. But no one knows where he is. And Elma's communicator is specifically designed to be able to communicate with him wherever he is, but he's not responding. And so it's just very strange. She's not sure where he is, and it's really bothering her. Obviously, because he's her brother. But no, he's not on an arc ship. He's who knows where. I thought I made that clear, and I apologize. Because as I mentioned, in 2051, there's the flashbacks to Elma and Ion talking about what they're going to do and mentioning the nail constructs and all that. that flashback does not take place in 2051. The 2051, the events that are written in standard text are in 2051. The italics, Elma's memories, are in 2030. Who knows? It doesn't matter. The point is that because Ion left in 2050 at the start of the story, every scene he appears in now has to be a flashback within the flashback stories. Because otherwise, then it doesn't make any sense. Because did he come back to Earth? No, he didn't. He's still gone. No one knows where he is. I thought I made that clear enough. I apologize if that ended up confusing you. So Exodus was originally a prologue because it was so short and so simple. But then I expanded on it when I introduced Chapter 2050. And then there was a point, I don't know if you know, where Chapter 2050 was called Prologue and Exodus was called Chapter 1. But I decided because 2050 was so much longer than Exodus, I'm like, well, it doesn't really feel like a prologue. I just changed it to Chapter 1. So that's it. Also, I actually had to go back into this chapter shortly before I submitted it and add in the Earth exploding because I did not put that in there originally. And also that gigantic skell that was chasing them right before they jumped through space, that was the Vita. As if that wasn't obvious enough. Oh, and another thing about this chapter that I thought was interesting, there's a point where they're on the bridge and the Earth explodes. Let's see. Where is the scene? Okay, where Vandam was talking and then someone's like, hey, we gotta do this, and then Vandam's like, I'm aware of this, Constantine, but in case you didn't notice, blah 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 blah, he's upset. He was talking to Constantine. When I originally wrote the chapter, I had him refer to him as Volif, which is Constantine's last name, because I wanted to kind of keep it a secret that Constantine was back from the original stories as a member of Alpha Wolf and Cruz's friend. But I thought, like, why would I want to keep that a secret? That's dumb. So I actually went in like near the end and changed it to just be Constantine, so you know, oh, it's him. You know, I don't know why I thought I would need to keep it a secret. But also that has been changed. Constantine's no longer a member of Alpha Wolf. He is the leader, and which I think he always was. But he's not Cruz's friend anymore. They are. There's more to that connection than just being buddies. Because Constantine's a lot older now. He used to be Cruz's age in the original story. Now he's a much older gentleman. Chapter 3, Guest. You know, I did find it odd that for all the biblical references the Xeno series loves to insert, I think that maybe me calling D064 the Cross probably inspired this comment. Like Cross being Mary Magdalene. I don't know who that is. If it's a religious thing, I'm not up to my biblical funnies or references. The one arc that we do follow and know survived is named after a Herman Melville work. Unless the whale that swallowed Jonah was also white. Once again, I'm not sure what you're talking about. As of writing this, I don't know if maybe the Japanese name for the white whale is closer to the Bible than the localized name. The Watcher, is that a DC comic reference? Oh sure, Elma, when the topic of Ion comes up, it's okay for you to come off as not wanting to talk about it, but Janix being uncomfortable about showing her battle scar to someone not Lila, that's fair game. It did lead to a pretty touching interaction though. Shame none of this can last. So apparently, this is one of Rexora's reviews. I didn't know that. I read this review and I'm like, who's this? Who's leaving a review on my story? I think Rexora later mentioned in the next review. Is chapter 4 review? No, it's chapter 5 review. He mentions it. That this was his review and I'm like, really? Reading this, it doesn't sound like you at all, man. It doesn't sound like your tone of voice for some reason. Like the last Elma comment on the bottom is just, I don't know. I was really confused when you said this was your comment. I'm like, no, it's not. You didn't write that. Like, I didn't believe for a second that you wrote this. As for the Watchers, I knew that they were a comic book thing. I knew that there was already a comic book somewhere that existed with something called the Watchers. I thought it was Marvel. It wasn't done as a reference. I just did it because they literally watched the galaxy. So I'm like, I'll just call them the Watchers. Keep it that simple. Although I guess you could more imagine that as being their profession. And then their actual species name is something else. I don't know. Regardless, yes and no with the comic reference. Like, I knew it was, but I wasn't directly referencing any comics. I just wanted to call them that. The comment about Elma and Janix, believe it or not, when I read that, I'm like, huh. I didn't think that was an insulting thing at all, or like that. I just thought it made sense for a reason highlighted in the next chapter. I don't know. I didn't think about it. And the biblical stuff, yeah, it's interesting that Xenoblade Chronicles X has so many references to Moby Dick. I actually had to look it up, and oddly enough, the Xenoblade Chronicles X wiki does not say that in Japanese the White Whale is called the Moby Dick. It doesn't say that. I had to look it up somewhere else and actually just read like comment threads on like GameFAQs and Reddit that said that, and I was like, okay, because I wanted to make sure that it was, and it was. I think in one of the early trailers for X that was still in Japanese but with English subtitles, it specifically says Moby Dick. It's, I think, the same type of trailer that we got dolls from instead of skells. But yeah, Moby Dick. I don't know what is up with Monolith Soft and Hideo Kojima looking at Moby Dick and thinking, yes, you know, I don't entirely know. But I'm totally cool with it. I don't think there's much else to say about that. I don't think much else happened in chapter. Actually, I'm surprised you didn't bring up that big conversation that Ion and Elma had about him going to the planet Clue and trying to obtain the schematics for nail constructs. Which, as you know, I think it was what's it called? Fuck. 1 second. It was art book stuff like that pointed out, that seemed to imply and state that the nail constructs, the robots, are from the planet Clue, which is where what's her name? Celica's from. That they came from there. In addition, I think also at the end of the game, when the ganglion is attacking the Lifehold, and it has this barrier. It's like, it's a Treon barrier, and then he's like, what? But that's like Clue stuff. Why did they have it? That doesn't make any sense. And it was like at that point that you realized there was maybe more to this story, and then Elma's like, oh, I did that, you know. So I wanted to kind of put that in the story to establish that point here. So that's what Ion did at some point before he left in 2050, was he went to Clue to try to ask them if they could have nail technology, and they said no, but you can have Treon technology for the Treon barrier. So you know, I just also I brought up two ganglion commanders. One was Ethos, who, if you recall, he was the one that I created, who was in charge of the ganglion after Luxar and everyone else was taken out, and he was the one that they defeated at the end of mission. That was his army before Badul and his people took off. And then the other commander I mentioned was Reese. We all know who Reese is. Reese and Dagan. I didn't choose her for any specific reasons. Not like I'm planning to do anything with Reese. I just chose. I'm like, all right, who's the ganglion commander? Reese is one. Okay, put her name in there. You know, simple as that. And Janix mentioning D64 of the Cross, as well as her sister Flame. Actually, that wasn't a Bible reference. When I was part of the Discord and I made friends, the character's name is Cross, and then you rename them to whatever you want to rename them. Flame is a cross that belongs to a friend of mine named well, I don't want to give out her Twitter handle, but it's her character. And so I thought it'd be funny to have Flame be living at a city called Cross. So yes, in my head I was like, people will definitely read the biblical reference on here, because I mean, hell, the main city is called Noah's Cradle. So I was like, okay, then yeah, sure, put that over there, you know. The cross, and it'll double as a religious thing, but also as a reference to the character's name, and that Flame lives there. As for Noah's Cradle, I love coming up with that name. It's so perfect, because there's an ark there. Granted, the ark is a different context. It's not Noah's Ark. It's, I mean, it kind of is, but it's named after the freaking whale from Moby Dick, so it's funny. But I realized that I'm like, wait a minute. I was going to call it Noah's Cradle because I'm like, well, it's Noah's Ark. But then I'm like, no, actually, they named it after the whale. So is there like a port or a location in the Moby Dick book that I can use, but I already fell in love with Noah's Cradle, so I said, never mind. So if you know of a port or a city or some location of importance in Moby Dick, that would have been, I would have looked up and that probably would have been the name of the city instead of Noah's Cradle. But I love Noah's Cradle, so there we go. Also, we're going to go over to Archive quickly, because Casey Rignon left a review on Chapter 2 and on Chapter 3. And she said, "This is awesome so far. Your take on this is really interesting. I can't wait to see what's in store for everyone." Thank you. I love that. Yeah, I love people just being excited. And their review on Chapter 3 was, "I love how you switch between the scenarios of Elma and Janix and Elma and Ion. Also with how you told the story so far by going from year to year in bits and pieces really gets me thinking about what's to happen next. Awesome stuff." Yeah, that timeline bouncing thing was not supposed to happen, but I've already talked about that enough. I'm glad it did, though, because I love telling the story this way. It's so much, it's just so interesting. Oh man, it's been half an hour already. Let's pick this up. We got 3 reviews left to go. I'm not going to be here for an hour.